everyone, senior high school students, statistics and probability, week 4 sampling techniques, random sampling. So for lesson number 1, we have random sampling. At the end of the session, the learner should be able to illustrate random sampling. To begin with our discussion for today, let me define to you the following words. So we have the terms like population and sample. For population, it consists of all members of the group with common characteristics that is focus of the research or where the sample is thrown. So going back to my previous examples, so let's say for A1 section in Caloocan High School, especially for HE. So I have 90 students taking the given examination. So I will get the mean of the scores of all of the students from the first student up to the 90th student or 90th student. So this will be our population. For the sample, a sample is a person, part, or a subset of the entire population. When you say sample is just a partition of the population. So going back to my example, yung 90 students natin, so I will just get 20 students out of the 90 students to represent the mean or the result of the given examination of my students. So next, for this part, we have sampling. So sampling is the procedure in selecting a sample from a population. This is usually done when a population is too large for gathering data. So going back to our problem, di ba? I have 90 students. So from 90 students, I will only select 20 students out of that 90 students. So I will apply different techniques on how I can get 20 students out of 90 students. In-apply din natin sa senior high school students, especially in our research, di ba? If we have a lot of respondents, di ba? Definitely we will use sampling in order for us to get at least a representation of the given population. So this will be our illustration for this part. So ito yung population and this one is the sample. Yung sample natin, nakukuha lang natin siya by getting or by using different sampling techniques. Next natin, for random sampling, effectively selecting a sample is essential in when a researcher wishes to achieve unbiased result in his or her study. So one of the best way to fulfill this is by using random sampling. So these are the types of random sampling that you may use in your research. So number 1, you may use simple random sampling. Number 2, systematic random sampling. Number 3, stratified random sampling. And lastly, you may use clustered or area sampling. So to begin, let's start with simple random sampling. So for simple random sampling, it is the most basic sampling techniques. In this sampling technique, every member of the population has an equal chance of being chosen to be part of the sample. Another thing, one way to do simple random sampling is by using table of random numbers or by using lottery method. So let's say we have a given example. A researcher wants to study the number of hours spent by an adult in doing household chores over a weekend in a certain community. So in selecting members of his sample, he wanted to use the simple random sampling technique. If there are 800 adults in the community, how many adults should be in the sample? So for this part, di ba, let's say you have 800. So yung 800 is kasi is somehow too many, especially if you are conducting a research. So para maging feasible siya, you have to get the representation or you have to get the sample of this given population. So yung population natin in this given problem is 800 and the sampling technique that we are going to use is the simple random sampling. So these are the steps. So step number 1, use the Slobin's formula in determining the number of adults that should be included in the sample. So meron tayong ipaprovide lang na given formula in order for us to know the number of respondents for this given research. Let's say for this given problem, we need to determine the number of adults. So using this formula, you have the smaller case n equals the uppercase n divided by 1 plus uppercase n times e raised to 2. wherein N is the population. So for this problem, the population in the community. And then N is for the number of adults. This will be our sample space or sample size. Then E is equal to the margin of error. For this part, we may use 5% or shall we convert this given percent into decimal. So yung 5% natin is equal to 0.05. So follow this given formula. 'Di ba? Based on our given problem, yung value ng N natin is the population or the population in the community. So for our given problem, yung value ng capital N natin is equal to 800, and we will use this given term, especially the decimal part, yung 0.05. And we are asked to find the number of adults and also yung concept nga po ng sample size or something size for this part. So, ganito lang yung mangyayari dyan. So, N is equal to 800 for the population divided by 1 plus 800 and our sampling error raised to 2. Then, by performing this given operation, we will arrive with N is equal to 266.67. Since we are pertaining to individuals, so we may convert our answer to the nearest whole number. So, yung 266.67 is around 267. So, we need 267 adult in this given study or research. Next natin, for step 2, after knowing yung 267 as our sample size, we need to assign number to each 800 adults in the community. So, we need to assign numbers from 1 to 800. So, for this part, let's say I have 1, 2, 3, and then I have adult number 1, adult number 2, adult number 3, up to 800 or adult 800. So, kailangan ko lang maglagay ng list for this given part. So, for step number 3, write the numbers from 1 to 800 on a piece of paper. So, you have 1, 2, then up to 800. Then next one, for step 4, you have to put all these pieces of paper with number on them in a bowl or empty box. So, we will apply na yung concept ng lottery method in knowing yung mga specific persons natin or individuals na magiging part ng research natin or respondents natin. Next one, for step number 5. For step number 5, randomly pick out of 267 folded papers from the bowl or box without looking. So this will be the appearance of step number 5. So ito lang siya. Assuming na box store a bowl, and then we have numbers from 1 to 800. So you will randomly pick 267 papers. Then for step 6, identify the adults that corresponds to 267 numbers randomly pick. So going back to our first step, 'di ba? Meron tayong list of numbers and we have the list of adults or the list of names of the following adults. So kukunin lang natin yung total of 267 numbers na makukuha natin by applying this lottery method. So we're done with the first part. So next one, we have the systematic random sampling. So for systematic random sampling technique in which every k element of the population is selected until the desired number of elements in the sample is obtained. The value of k is the sampling interval. So for this part, especially for this kind of problem, lagi nang given dito yung concept ng population and also the idea about the sample size. So we are asked to find only the value of k or the sampling interval or the gap of one given element with the other element. So we will use this given formula. So k is equal to capital N, wherein capital N corresponds to the population and smaller n corresponds to the sample. So ito lang naman din siya. And then k is for the sampling interval or gap between the following elements. So this will be our illustration for this given problem or this given random sampling. So let's say for this given situation, ito yung first element natin. Then by knowing the interval or the value of k, let's say for this problem, meron tayong 1, 2, 3. We have 3 as the interval. So to know the next person to be part of our research or to be as our respondent, we need to add 3 for this given situation. So ito yung pangalawa, by adding 3, you will solve for, or you will find the third one and then add by 3, then makukuha mo ulit yung next one. So this will be our situation under systematic sampling. Next one example, there are 400 families in the barangay in which 50 families are needed as sample for an experiment. So for this given problem, of course, you have to consider the value of the population. So the population for this given problem is the 400 families. And then for our sample is the concept of 50 families. So using those terms, we will apply this given procedure. For step number 1, prepare a sampling frame by randomly arranging 400 families. Step 2, assign each family a number from 1 to 400. So this will be the appearance of step 1 and step number 2. So for this part, for the family, diba, you can arrange the given family according to your preferences. So pwede siyang i-arrange in alphabetical order, or pwede naman din siya in-arrange in this kind of manner. Or on the second one, or the second part, you have to assign number from 1 to 400. So let's say for this situation, yung Santos family is number 1, Garcia family is number 2, Ramos family is 400. Next one natin, for this given solution, step number 3, find the sampling interval. So as I said a while ago, consider the value of the population and the value of the sample. So for our problem, we have 400 families, and we only need 50 families out of 400. So we will use this given formula. So K is equal to capital N divided by smaller n. So we have 400 divided by 50. So 400 divided by 50 is equal to 8 as the sample interval. So meaning, yung gap natin from the first element going to the second element and so on and so forth, you need to consider constant sample interval as 8. So meron tayong 8 as the gap. Next one, for step 4, select a number from a whole numbers between 0 and k plus 1 by simple random technique. The numbers that are between 0 and k plus 1 are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. The chosen value is called as the random start. So pakita ko na lang tong part na to by an illustration. So for step number 5, assume that the randomly selected number is 3. So use 3 as the starting number. So ito yung tinatawag kanina natin na random start, di ba? From numbers from 1 to 8, di ba? We can use other sampling techniques like random sampling, di ba? By applying random sampling or lottery method, let's say we arrive with 8. We arrive with 3. So for this part, yung 3 will be our starting number for this given problem. Then for step number 6, every 8 families from the sampling frame starting from the third family, diba? We already solved for the value of k or the sampling intervals. So after knowing yung random start natin or starting number natin as 3, in order for us to know the second family, third family, fourth families to be included in our research or in our respondents, we have to add 8. So ito lang yung illustration natin. So number 3 family is the first family according to the random start. Then by applying the value of k or the sampling interval, you have to add 8 for the next one. So 3 plus 8, so you will have 11. So this will be the second family. Then 11 plus 8 is 19. So this will be the third family. So last one, therefore the numbers of sample will be then 3, 11, 19, and if we will try to extend itong problem natin or given numbers natin of families, we can still arrive with 27, diba? Kasi we need to add 8 from 19. And then, syempre, kung gusto mo pang hanapin yung next with 27, you have to add 8 to solve for 35. So this will be the 5th family in this given research or study. So next one, for number 3, I have the stratified random sampling. For stratified random sampling, the population is partitioned into several subgroups called the strata. which are based on some characteristics like year level, gender, age, ethnicity, and etc. So for my given illustration, let's say I have different students, especially from junior high school to senior high school. So by applying stratified random sampling, I just group the following students into their common characteristics. Like for example, in this situation, di ba meron tayong representation for grade 7 students, grade 8 students, grade 9 students, grade 10 students, and I have grade 11 students. Then from this given population, we need to find the sample out of that. And syempre, we also need um, to get sample from every year level. From every year level. So next one, these are some of the examples. So example number one, a clothing company wants to describe whether 1,000 customers prepare any specific color over other colors in search. How are you going to choose your sample of 200 customers by using stratified sampling? If there are 144, 162, 73, 146, 270, 205 customer per stratum. Subdivide the population with their preferred search colors into several strata, then make a table. So solution, step number one, so create a table. So going back to our problem, di ba, nakaspecify naman yung mga numbers. We specify the number of customers. And I will just simply add yung mga colors natin. So for this given problem, let's assume that we have white color, black, blue, red, yellow, and then green. And these are the corresponding number of customers per every t-shirt color. So let's say for white, I have 144. For blue, I have 162. For black, 73. For red, 146. For yellow, I have 270. And then for green, I have 205 with a total of 1,000 customers or 1,000 t-shirts. Next one for step number two, to obtain the sample size per color, divide the number of customer per stratum by the number of customers and then multiply the result by 200. Select the members of each sample by using simple random sampling. Then this will be the computation if we need to solve for the sample size of the given t-shirts. Nakalagay kasi dito, 'di ba? Going back to our problem, nag-start tayo with white. So we will apply this formula in getting the number of customers to be part of our research, especially for white. After determining for white, di ba, we will also apply this principle or idea with the other colors. Like for example, di ba nandyan yung blue, yung black, and other colors. So computation for the sample size, let's say for white, so sample size for white is equal to the people prepared white divided by the total customers. So going back to our problem, di ba? For white, I have 144 individuals or customer who prepared to wear white color t-shirt. Then divided by the total number of customers natin, I have 1,000 as the customer. Ito lang naman sinasabi dyan. And the next thing, you have to multiply the result by 200 because we need to multiply this part by the sample size. So sample size kasi natin or sample for this part is 200. So I have 200. So next one, so 144 divided by 1,000 times 200 is around 29. So for this part, I need 29 out of 144 customers for the white t-shirt. So sila na yung magiging part ng studies natin for this given part. So I have 29 out of 144. So pipili lang ako ng 29. So next one, step number 3, continue step 2 process for other colors. Diba? As I said a while ago, we will apply the same concept or principle in knowing the sample for the other colors. So we will use this given table. Ito pa rin po siya. So let's start with white or recall for white. For computation, you have 144 since I have 144 individuals who prepared white color t-shirt divided by the total number of customers and then multiply by 200, and then we will arrive with 28.8. So for 28.8, we can approximate our answer to the nearest whole number. So yung 28.8 is around 29. So I need 29 individuals. How about for blue? So applying the same concept for blue, I have 162 over 1,000 times 200. And then by performing the following operations, I will have 32.4. So 32.4 is approximately 32 individuals. And then for black, diba, for black, I have 73 over 1,000 times 200. And then I will have 14.6 or approximately 15 individuals. And then for red, the same process pa rin siya. We have 146 over 1,000 times 200, and you will arrive with 29.2 or approximately 29 individuals. And then for yellow, I have 270 over 1,000 times 200. So that's 54. So sakto na siya. Then for green, so 205 divided by 1,000 times 200 is equal to 41. Then lastly, to solve for the total number of or the part of the sample, you have to combine 29, 32, 15, 29, 54, and 41. So I will have 200 individuals to be part of our study. So next one, so last part of our discussion for this given video lesson. For number 4, you have clustered or area sampling. For clustered or area sampling, the population is divided into clusters. From this cluster, random sample clusters will be drawn. All the elements from the sample cluster will make up the sample. Let's say for this given situation. So assuming yung mga nasa illustration natin is hospitals. And then I have to cluster the following hospitals. So let's say for this part, di ba, I label this given section as cluster 1, this given part as cluster 2, this part as cluster 3, this part as cluster 4, and lastly, this will be our cluster number 5. So these are some of the steps and problems related with that given illustration. So example, suppose some medical researchers want to study the patients in Metro Manila. So how are you going to do this using the cluster sampling technique? So step number 1, you have to divide the population into cluster. Use few hospitals as cluster. Diba? If you will look at our illustration, there's a lot of hospital, diba? So I will just group the following hospitals into clusters. So for step 2, not all hospitals in Metro Manila will be included in the sample. This could be selected as simple random sampling. So let's say for this given part, diba, I have 5 clusters. So I will apply simple random sampling to get given cluster na magiging part ng research natin. So let's say for this given part, diba, napuha natin yung cluster number 5 and also cluster number 1. So next thing, for number 3, not all patients in the chosen hospital will be included in the study. Select the final patients to be included in the sample by using a simple random sampling. So let's say for this given cluster, I have cluster number 1. So after knowing or determining cluster number 1 as part of my sample, I will use again the concept of simple random sampling. And then by that, diba, makakapili tayo ng specific hospital or patient from that hospital, and then we can also specify yung patient natin to be included in our study. So that's all for today, senior high school student. Thank you for watching and listening. God bless and stay safe.